thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. And she has read that quote out of my book, which I had forgotten was there. And I have actually included some of that in my talk this morning, because I respect each one of you. What we're doing by being mums is huge, not only in our children's life, but in our culture. And I think here in Boston, on this east coast of America, I think is very similar to what I grew up with in Australia, in the fact that you're really post-Christian. You know, the number of Christians that you have in your street, whatever, is more minimal. And Australia too is a post-Christian country. You got the, well, Boston, you definitely know you got the pilgrims. We got the prisoners. You know, so you at least had a better start than what we did. But you know, England shared their good things around the world. But I was shocked when we moved to Nashville, Tennessee 32 years ago, in the fact that I had neighbours come over and they would bring the biscuits or, you know, the cookies, but I was okay. I mean, like, that's fairly normal sort of thing to do. But then they'd say, so what church do you go to? Or, you know, I'd love to invite you to my church. And it's just like, when you go to church in Australia, which I imagine is the same here, you are the only person on the street who's going. I mean, you know, you sort of see people doing their lawns, or you see people packing up and going to the beach, or you see people, you know, but going to church, just doesn't happen. So I relate very strongly to the environment that you all are in. I'm not sure how much you guys know. I mean, Sandra gave the little intro there that I am the mum of Rebecca St. James, as well as the two boys, Joel and Luke, in for King Country. But I am Australian by birth, which I suppose you know by now, and hopefully you can still tell by the accent. David and I came to America 32 years ago. I have been married for 49 years to my best friend, who's up in the corner up there. And I just want to remind each one of you, because I see a couple of grey hairs who joined me, but most of you are younger. I want to remind you or encourage you to grow old with someone you love and who loves you is probably one of the greatest privileges that you can have. So hang in there. Marriage is definitely not easy, but hang in there. I trained actually as an occupational therapist. I didn't practice much. I love the training. My dad actually wanted me to train for some job, and that was the one that I chose. But I always really wanted to be a wife and a mum. And I've had that privilege of being a wife and a mum, and I loved being a wife and a mum. We have been blessed with 7 children. We have bookend girls and 5 boys in the middle. By the grey hair, all our kids are adults now. 6 are married, and we have 15 and a half grandchildren. So we are now a family of 30 and a half. I am basically a homebody. My happy place is on our little farm just outside of Nashville, caring for my menagerie. My husband likes to brag that I have 246 animals. He hasn't got a clue how many animals I have. However, I do have quite a few. I have, I think, 10 horses last count. A couple of donkeys, goats, alpacas, a couple of pigs, not doing pigs again, as well as dogs and cats. But what creates the 200 are birds. We have geese, ducks, chickens, and guineas. So it is quite the little place to be, and it's sort of a sacrifice when I leave it, but I know that this is a season where I'm wanting to follow. Well, I think all our lives we need to be following God, but He is definitely stretching me out of my comfort zone. And in doing that, as Sandra mentioned, I have a passion for mums and families. And he's given me new opportunities. This is an age, I'm about to turn 69 years old. This is an age where theoretically I should be retired and just enjoying all those animals. But he has given me more opportunities in the last few years to do interviews, the podcast she mentioned, Mum Life Community, that's a part of my heart. And then speaking events like what we're doing today. And as Sandra said, and the other ladies, particularly Maureen with the prayer counselling, we were very aware that the enemy is alive and well, and that he is chasing after our marriages and our families. This is a time when we as women, we need to stand strong by growing the foundation of our lives. And as we are reminded by the Bible verse of today, that foundation is Jesus Christ. We need to choose each day to love our husbands, to love them well. We need to choose each day to invite Jesus into our homes. And today I want to encourage you in some practical ways on how to build a stronger home and stronger marriages. But first I want to start with what we all have in common. We're all women, except for some brave men on that back row. And then a boy over here too. We're all women. And I sometimes think our current culture has confused God's original design of what it actually means to be a woman. And I think that's the foundation of some of the distortion of how we view our roles as women, as wives, and as mums. We often feel that we need to compete with men. We feel that women can do anything a man can do. My challenge to each of you today in thinking about this and our role as a woman is that God made us different to a man. I mean, look at us, we're different. We were created, I believe, to do everything a man cannot do. It's a different philosophy. We were created uniquely with a God-given femininity. We were made to complement and complete. We were made to complement a man, not compete with a man. I grew up a pastor's kids, and I had 3 older brothers. When I was born, and the doctor said, "Oh, you've got a girl," she said, "Are you sure?" And the doctor said, "I think I can tell the difference." So she really wanted me to be different to the boys. And I actually resented it. I had a poor relationship with my mum for quite a few years until God grew me up a bit. I just wanted to be one of the boys. I mean, everything the boys did, I want to do. Cooking, going out to the creek and playing in the water, yes. But I was reminded over time that I was different, because puberty happens and you do end up realising we are made different. But I'm still what I would deem not a frou-frou type of woman. I don't do manicures, nail polish. I wear as little makeup as possible and as rarely as I need to. I keep my hair short. I don't want to look in the mirror too much, frankly. It just gets discouraging sometimes. So I actually go out and about and I'm like, did I actually look at my hair this morning? So I can count on the number on one hand the number of times I visited a hairdresser in the last 30 years since we've been in America. However, I stand here before you today very thankful that I'm a woman. Very thankful. I embrace it wholeheartedly. What a privilege it is to be a woman. I love that God uses our bodies to grow another life. This has to be the most fulfilling experience that you can have. I love that God instinctually made us to know how to love and how to nurture another. I love that God made us unique for his special purposes. And when we look at nature, and as you know, animals are a big part of my love, the lioness she doesn't compete with the lion. She has a totally different role. She accepts her differentness, and often she does the major work. I mean, she goes out there, kills the animal, and then he comes along and helps himself. Not unlike us as women, actually. However, she's powerful, she's strong, and yet she's nurturing. You see her playing with her cubs. She's nurturing. She does not mistake her meekness for weakness. And the world needs more kind, compassionate, humble, faithful, persevering, confident, fierce, bold, pure, tender-hearted women. I want to encourage each of you here today. Be one of those women. And believe it or not, the lioness is best describes the woman in Genesis 2:18. And it says, "The Lord said, it's not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him." So God made a woman to be a helper for a man. And some of us hearing this verse will start to feel a little on the upset side, and maybe even can go into defensive mode. I'm not just a helper. Because we really think helper means a man's assistant or maybe even his servant. But that's not what it's intended. And a lot of times we get a lot of help by going back to the original words that are used in the Bible that sometimes really can't be translated very accurately. And the words used for helper and fit in this passage are the words Isa Kenegdo. The word Isa has two meanings. It's to rescue or save and to be strong. In the Old Testament, it's actually used 21 times, and it's consistently used in military contexts. Isa refers to being a warrior, a force to come, a force that's going to help, and to rescue. That's actually the word that is used in, I think it's Psalm 121, when I lift my eyes to the hills, from where does my help, Isa, come from? It comes from the Lord. The word Kenegdo means opposite as to him or corresponding as to him. We as women are Isa Kenegdo. We are a strong warrior who is complementary to a man. Ladies, we really are the lioness. And I want to encourage you to embrace all that God has for you as a woman. And as I mentioned earlier, we know our marriages and our families are under attack from the enemy. And as Sandra read from the book, marriages are the foundation of the family. And the family is the foundation of our society. If our marriages and our families are in crisis, then our culture is in crisis. And I think you are all very aware of that, even hearing about schools. Like, you know, there's a deterioration everywhere in our society. Research shows that an estimated 41% of marriages end in divorce, and the likelihood of divorce is even higher in any subsequent marriages. And I'm aware in this group of women we will have single mums. We'll have women who are or have been divorced. I want you to remember that we've all made mistakes, and each one of us has a past. Our pasts have been forgiven. And when Jesus does that perfect work in our hearts, there's no shame. It's gone, it's past. He's forgiven it. It's been wiped clean. We learn from our past. And I want to encourage each one of you to learn from your past. And we look to the future with hope as we walk with Jesus. Jesus is always our hope, our strength for everything that we do. As I mentioned earlier, I'm very thankful to be a wife. And it's a privilege, I think, to partner with our husbands in raising our children and in living life. I realise David and I are so very different. He's more of an extrovert, which some of you on the back row are going to know.
That's not fair.
And I'm a little more of an introvert. And sometimes he knows those differences can actually drive me crazy. But I'm very aware God uses those differences to make us a better whole. When we're together, we're a better whole. And so I want to encourage you, you'll look at your husband, and I'm sure there are times when he's going to drive you crazy too. But look at your differences and accept them, because he is not meant to be you. I love that God uses this very close relationship of marriage to file away the rough edges that are in me and to grow me. I love that the marriage relationship models the relationship the church has with Christ. We are his bride. And I want to read the passage from Ephesians 5:22-24. Wives, understand and support your husbands in ways that show your respect and support for Christ. The husband provides leadership to his wife the way Christ does to his church, not by domineering, but by cherishing. So just as the church submits to Christ as he exercises such leadership, wives should also submit to their husbands. And bringing up another point, submission. That's even a worse one than helper. It's really not a top popular subject. It can be very touchy because each of us, and it's an irony, because each of us wants to see ourselves as strong, capable, and independent. And I've just talked about women are meant to be strong and capable, but we're not meant to be independent. Independence is a cultural norm, but it's not a biblical norm. God actually desires us to be dependent. He wants us to be dependent on him for leadership, for direction, and for provision. I want to share a story with you. And if you haven't read my book or know a lot about our family, you're probably not going to know anything about it. You can look at our family and see success. You can see, between Rebecca and the boys, they've received 5 Grammys. I mean, there's a lot of success, and you can think that, it all looks pretty grand. But the circumstances that brought our family to America were significant. My husband's business in Australia went under, and we lost everything. He was 40 years old at the time. We had 6 kids, and we knew that this was going to be a major life change. He was a broken man looking for a new direction and a way to provide for his family. About 18 months later, so he was probably nearly, I think he was 42, we had the opportunity to come to America to start again. But we didn't have anything. We'd sold everything back in Australia. We'd actually moved towns. But I was now pregnant with our 7th child. When we arrived in 1991, we arrived with 16 suitcases. We got settled into our rental home. We had no furniture, no car, and we struggled to put food on the table. And those of you who might be immigrants might have a similar story or can relate. It's not easy to start again. We had no health insurance, which most people would deem here in America as absolutely crazy. And they have made this movie, Unsung Hero, about our story of coming here. And I look at it and I think, oh my goodness, we were absolutely crazy. I mean, but you do what you got to do. But you know what we had? We had God and we had each other. And we prayed and saw God provide. We saw miracles, amazing stuff. Our pastor who saw the movie actually said, if you want to see a miracle, need a miracle. And so often we're providing so carefully for ourselves that God actually doesn't have much place to turn up and care for us. At this time of our life, David, as head of our household, as you can imagine, felt an absolute failure. He couldn't even provide for his family. He was vulnerable and he was broken. And I think back and ask myself, what if I had not practiced submission in the home? What if I'd trusted in David instead of in God? I think I actually would have pointed out all his failures. I think I would have maybe spoken some words I would have regretted. And if I had spoken those harsh words to him at this time, I think he would have curled up and died. Not literally, but inside. If this had happened, all the plans God had for us, plans for our future, would not have eventuated. And how different our lives would have been. I definitely would not be here today. I wouldn't have seen the miracles that God has worked in our lives. There would be no Rebecca St. James. There would be no For King and Country. So I challenge you, each of you, let's work on your marriage and be a better wife. And I'm a pretty practical person, so I wanted to, give a few encouragements to you on how you can maybe be a better wife. First up, which is a pretty obvious thing, I just related our story. Be careful of your words. Proverbs 18:21 says, your words are so powerful that they will kill or they will give life. And the talkative person will reap the consequences. My mother used to have a saying she would repeat often, because I imagine we needed it often. If you can't think of anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. You can't take back a word spoken in haste. So my encouragement, use less words. And if you can't think of anything nice to say, keep your mouth shut. And another one I want to challenge you on is, remember that as husband and wife, you're on the same team. You are a team. You are one. If you criticize your husband, you're actually criticizing yourself. A team needs to be unified. If not, if you're upset about something, and we have a tendency to get upset a fair amount, ask yourself, am I going to be upset about this next week? Or am I going to have forgotten all about that? And remember how many arguments we have, and you think back and I actually can't even remember what we argued about. My encouragement, if it's not important, let it go. It's just not worth it. But if it is a matter that in a week or so you really do need to address, I encourage you to use I statements. I am feeling alone. I need more. I need whatever. Not you are. Because you statements are attacking. I statements are less aggressive, I suppose. Resolve conflicts quickly. Next point is, be patient with your husband's idiosyncrasies. Remember, he has to put up with yours. Give grace often. Think the best of your husband, not the worst. I think a lot of stuff that we do as women actually starts in our minds. And if we don't think good thoughts, eventually it's going to lead to words, which will lead to action. Practice forgiveness. Don't be afraid to say sorry. Say sorry often. Make your husband a priority. The health of your home is based on your relationship with your husband. Prioritize him, and that includes prioritizing your sexual relationship. I think as women, we tend to pour our lives and our hearts out into our children, and our husbands often get neglected. Make sure you prioritise your relationship with your husband. I want to encourage you to grow your marriage relationship because it's lovely, as I said, to grow old with someone you love. And I suppose, going on to my heart and my soul, being a mum. It's been the joy of my life. Our kids range in age now from 46 down to 32. So they're all up and going and living their own lives. But during my time, I was actually a full-time mum, I think, for 32 years. That's from the time Rebecca was born to the time, presumably, Libby left school. She's a little slow in leaving school, so it's actually probably longer in that, because we did homeschool. I think I homeschooled for over 20 years. Even though I look at myself and I sort of think, 32 years, wow, I really think I was probably a professional mum, you know, because I didn't do anything else. Like, it's not, I did do the occupational therapy, but it lasted for 18 months, I think, and that was it. And I had no desire to go back. I loved it, but I had no desire to go back because I'd found my world. My world was pouring into kids. Being a mum is the hardest job on the planet. And it is the most unrecognised job on the planet. Every day is about pouring your life out for somebody else. I also view being a mum as the most important and godly role in society. Because mums, we are shaping the world of tomorrow by influencing and loving the children God has entrusted into our care. There's an old saying, the hand that rocks the cradle holds the world. And it is true. It is true. You are doing a significant work. And a lot of times we can look at our work and think, it's not that significant. I mean, I spend my day doing mundane work. I'm changing diapers, I'm cleaning, I'm picking up, I'm cooking, I'm correcting, I'm doing laundry, I'm hiding in the closet to get away from everybody. But I want to remind you that being a mum is the most Christ-like work that there is. We don't realise that this unseen repetitive work is actually modelling after Jesus. And I want to read a passage that Jesus spoke to his disciples from Matthew 20, 25 to 28. He said, "You know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and officials have flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you and among us, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must become your slave. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many." When we serve our families, we are being like Jesus. We are who poured out his life for us. When I view my life from this perspective, it actually becomes a divine calling. It's not just that mundane work, it's a divine calling. It's a divine calling to impact, to grow, and to love on a child. Remember, when you are in the craziness of daily life, that you are impacting the world of tomorrow. What a wonderful privilege each of us has. So I want to share a few practical mothering tips. The other was on being a wife. This one's on being a mum. Keep open communication with your children. I think this has to be the foundation. Take time to sit and talk with your kids. It's in the car, it's over dinner, doing projects together. I actually think my best times is when we've tackled a project together, when we're not sort of, I sometimes hear of, and I see it I suppose on social media, of people going out and saying, you know, we went on a mother-daughter date. I think that's great, but I actually don't think you're possibly going to get the quality time you need there. Doing something together where you're working side by side, you're probably going to have greater, greater conversation, because you're not looking. I think there's something a little intimidating about sitting and just looking at someone across the table. Remember to put away your phones. I think I look at people at meals, I look at people in the home sometimes too, and I have a phone. I quite like communicating with the world. But it's hard when you're on your phone to actually be present. And the moments are gone. Like some of our special moments we can miss. Good communication, I think, can be encouraged by having family meals and sitting around the table. I came from a generation where every night we had, breakfasts are always a bit of a blur because everybody's getting up and, you know, going somewhere, but definitely every night was a family meal. And it's probably was always a norm in our home, so I don't even realise that it's possibly not a norm in a lot of people's homes. I like the fact that you've got a certain period of time to sit and be with one another, and you can be intentional. I know a lot of families who ask questions at the table, like, what was your favourite moment of the day? And they'll specifically go around and talk, or what was the thing that you found hardest today? But I think eating together, and if you look at the generations of eating together, in some cultures, it's just so important, particularly in a lot of European cultures. It's a hugely important thing. So don't forget the family meal. As mums, I think, and as women, we're often good talkers. Sometimes it's hard to be a good listener. My husband, when our kids were little, and and all of you are going to relate, you get to the end of the day and you're like, I can't wait to get those kids in bed. I just can't wait. But he would help me, you know, while I'm cleaning up in the kitchen, he would bath the kids and then he'd put them in bed, and we would say prayers with the kids every night, and then he would sort of lie with the kids. They'd say, Daddy, can you lie with me? And he would lie there, prolong the bedtime. And he would often sing to them. They would talk about some of their worries from the day and whatever. And it was one of his joys. It was one of my frustrations. I mean, I'm like, just get out of the room. Like, just let the kids go to sleep. Like, it's getting late. By the laughter, I think you might relate. I mean, it's just... And then when he would go out of town, Mum, can you lie with me? And I'm like... Some of my kids have these great nightly rituals. They've got to sing to their kids, they've got to sing certain songs, they've got to read... And I'm like, get the kid in bed, just get out of there. But, you know, obviously patience in those days especially was not one of my strong points. But eventually, he stopped doing it. We had 7 kids. We probably did it with the older 4, the younger 3 missed out. And after a while, I said, why don't you lie with the kids anymore? And he looked at me like, you hated me lying with the kids. But I realised I had tried to make him like me. And I had stopped something precious that he knew he needed and that they needed. So just be really careful. Your husband brings things to the table that you cannot. Allow him to do it and suck up the frustration. A big one that I think we can learn from as parents is attitude comes before action. And it's one that I want you to go home and actually dwell on. Because kids will express themselves often in an attitude before they're going to express themselves in an action. So when I say that, there's the roll of the eyes. There's the impatient body stance. Come on. You know, there's an attitude, but then will come the slamming of the doors. Then will come the shutting out. Then I'm not going to talk to you. You know, the action comes later. Notice the attitudes. And my encouragement is deal with the attitudes as they come, and you'll stop a lot of the progression into actions. You'll see in your kids they'll demonstrate disrespect. The Bible tells we need to teach our children how to respect. You'll see impatience. Luke 6:45 says, "A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. What you say flows from what is in your heart." So look at their hearts. Look at who they're becoming. And frankly, I also say, enjoy your kids. Like your kids. I know a lot of mums who love their kids desperately. They don't actually like them. It communicates. Your kids are going to know. Just like I think that is the hardest thing in a family, and it's probably why God put us in families. I remember one of my daughters coming to me at one point and said, "I know what you think." So I haven't said anything. She said, "You don't have to say anything. I can tell by the look at you that you don't agree with what I just said." I'm like, I can't help what I think. You know, like, it communicates. The unspoken words communicate. Like your kids. If you don't, then you need some time with God to figure out what's gone wrong, because you should like your kids. And I suppose that comes into the next point that I have. Understand your child's heart. As that Bible verse said, things come. Everything we do and who we are comes from our hearts. Proverbs 4:23 reminds us again, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. The heart is the place from where our emotions, our desires, and our convictions come. If we want to bring life change to our children, then we need to capture, we need to understand their hearts. And this takes time. It takes intentionality. It takes good communication. It takes patience. And frankly, it takes a very good dose of prayer and wisdom and understanding. In a nutshell, I think to understand your child's heart means to talk. Then it means to listen, maybe not in that order. And then it means to pray. Changes in behaviour will happen as we understand more of the child's heart. And Proverbs 22:6 reminds us, point your kids in the right direction, and when they're old, they won't be lost. And the next point is invite Jesus into your home. And it's such a, everybody would be like, but Jesus is in our home, we're believers. It's deeper than that. It means that he becomes the core foundation of your home. It means that you're practicing biblical principles every day. You're telling stories. David and I think, have the unenviable task of our story being slung out here in Unsung Hero. But each of us has a story. God's writing a story for each one of you. Tell your stories. It's not always going to be the good. It's going to be the things you made mistakes. It's going to be the things where you felt vulnerable. It's going to be your hurts. Tell your stories. Kids need to hear your stories, because our stories as believers will point to God's goodness and God's faithfulness. And they need to see him in your life. I also am a big believer in turning everyday, ordinary incidents into teachable moments with our kids. Allow them to make mistakes and then help them learn from their mistakes. Say sorry. You're not perfect. You're going to mess up. You're going to do wrong things. You're going to hurt your kids. Say sorry. Ask for forgiveness. And be kind. Be kind in the words you use. Be kind in your attitude. And love. Be loving to each other. And one of the greatest things, the hardest part, I think, of being a mum, of being a parent, is you're on a marathon. It's not a sprint. I mean, it's a marathon. It's 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and how many years? Like, you are on a marathon. You never know what's round the bend. You never know what's up the hill. You never know what a new day is going to bring. We each need wisdom. We need wisdom on knowing how firm to be with our kids. Is this a character trait? Is this a stage? Is this just a response to an incident? We need to know how much grace to give. Do I forgive them for this? Is there punishment for this? Are there consequences for this? We need to have wisdom in the words that we use, how we address an issue. We need to have wisdom whether we are to encourage, how to encourage our kids and how to correct our children. And we need enough emotional energy. And look after yourselves, mums. You need emotional energy in order to be present for your children. When we're rushed, when we're tired, when we're spun out, we are not the mum that we need to be. I homeschooled, and for those of you who homeschool, it's full on. I mean, you're with those kids. You don't even get the 6-hour break from when they go to school. I mean, it is full on. And I, about lunchtime, start to feel the tensions rising within me. And so after lunch, a lot of times, particularly for younger kids, I'd be like, okay, everyone to their rooms. Rest time. And I can remember, we don't need a rest. I'm like, you may not need a rest, but I do. And it was in that pacing of the day of having, and they knew what they could read. I mean, they just had to stay quiet and they had to stay in their rooms, presumably on their beds, but in their rooms, and just leave me alone for an hour. Because I realised if I didn't do it, I didn't like the mum I became at 5 and at 6 and at 7 and at bedtime. And so it helped me survive the day. And then when you can, and it's not just even maybe surviving, but it helped me to be able to have the patience to be there when I was needed. Because if you don't have anything left, you can't give any more from an empty tank. So fill up your tank, mums. Fill up your tank, whatever that looks like for each one of you. And then you have the situations where you honestly don't know how to handle. And I've had a bunch, the older ladies all day, they're all with me on this. But you honestly just don't know how to handle. And you've got to ask God for wisdom. And the crazy thing is James 1:5 says, if you need wisdom, and mums, each one of us need wisdom, ask our generous God. I love that. Ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. I often think we have not because we ask not. And the whole, above all of this, it's pray. Pray together as a family. Pray for one another. Pray at meals. Pray before going to bed. Pray with your kids. And these days, pray with your kids if they're heading out the school door to go to school. I mean, it's a scary day these days. Pray with your husband. And some of your husbands aren't going to be on the same page spiritually as where you might be. If he won't pray or he can't pray with you, pray for him. Pray for your needs. When we first came to America, we gathered together as a family and we prayed. The kids knew we were in dire straits. We needed the kids to be with us. They actually often, by their work and their encouragement, it helps see us through. They worked doing menial tasks of raking, mowing lawns, cleaning, and they helped put food on the table for us. But during that season when we were praying for specific needs, the kids saw God answer those prayers, and it changed us all. Pray for guidance. I've had numerous times, and mums, you're going to relate, where I honestly didn't know what was going on in my kids, or a kid. There are easier kids, there are harder kids, there are ones you don't understand, there are ones that are reacting in ways where you like, this doesn't make sense. Pray. But don't forget to listen, because he will tell you what's going on. He knows what's going on inside your child. He knows what they're dealing with. And if you pray for insight, he will lead you. He will tell you. I've had three instances where I know to the core of my being God spoke to me. And they were promises. Well, one wasn't a promise, but I'm going to share two promises that he spoke to me. One was we were about to start a year, and Rebecca had probably been performing for about 5 or 6 years, and we were about to start a year, and the kids were her crew. So the boys, not only were we homeschooling, which was pretty hard in those days because we were travelling so much, but they were her crew. They would set up the lights and they would set up the stage each night. And they did that for, the most, I think probably all her career. So this one year, we were travelling for 13 months. Now, there's 12 months in a year. It just was my way of thinking this is ridiculous. And we were crisscrossing America, we were travelling to Europe, and I'm like, how do you set schoolwork for kids when you're travelling so much and they are working a 12-hour day? And I'm like, I don't want to do schoolwork. So we would do schoolwork when we were home, but I was really scared, and if you're a homeschool mum, you might be scared too, that my kids would get to the end of school and be like, Mum, you just messed up my life. I mean, I don't have enough to be able to do what I need to do. And so that year I went to God and I said, God, what do I set here? How do I expect them to do schoolwork when I don't even want to look at it? And I'm the adult. And he gave me a promise, and the promise was, I will teach them what they need to know. And I tell you what, when they were in those younger years and you don't know what their futures are, it was something I could stand on, but I couldn't see the reality of. But they're adults now. He has been faithful to that promise. He has taught them what they need to know for their life. And I'm so very grateful. Another time was with our youngest daughter. She was about 5. And I could not get my head around her. I honestly couldn't understand what was going on in her head. Most of our kids, when they're little, and I don't know whether you relate to this or not, but there seems to be a bit of a God-given sensitivity. Like they're sensitive to godly things. Like they can even encourage us in our weak times. She had nothing, nilch, nothing. I mean, we'd say, we're going to pray. Oh. She'd sit there, she'd roll her eyes. She'd look to the ceiling and the sighs would come. And sometimes when she thought there was something going on, she would disappear. It's like, I'm out of here before they even start. And I was just like, God, I just don't understand. This is meant to be the little ones, they're meant to be the most receptive out there. And here she is just like, And so I was really worried because nobody else had been like this, and she was number 7, and there is a little bit of a precedent at that point. And I was just like, God, tell me what's going on here, because I just don't know what's in her head. Like, I'm really worried. And he gave me another promise. And he said, at the moment, she's like a closed bud, like a flower, a closed bud. And one day I'll open her into a beautiful flower. He has been faithful. She's 32 years old now. He has been faithful. It has been a hard journey that she has walked, but he has been faithful to his promise. Seek him. Seek his wisdom. Seek his special word to you as mum regarding your kids. Some of it might just be, keep praying. I'll do it. Be faithful. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I just thank you for each of these women who are attending here today. You know their homes, you know their marriages, you know their weaknesses and their strengths, you know them inside out. I just pray that today they will be filled up, that they will be refreshed, that they will be encouraged to take you into their hearts and into their homes and into their lives in a deeper way. That they will allow you to be in their home, that they will follow you, they will seek you, that they will be followers and strong warrior women who stand for you as wives, as mums, as women. We thank you for the way that you, Holy Spirit, fills us and guides us and speaks to us and teaches us and gives us wisdom. And I pray that for each woman. And I want to close. I'm going to pray a prayer of blessing over each one of you. It comes from Ephesians 3. I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the saints, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Amen.